I checked my bag at the hotel, about which he has many New Yorker-style complaints, and I set out to explore a bit. The first shock hit me at the moment I stepped into the street. There was a strange hush over everything. I expected to encounter something at least a little like the exciting bustle of Manhattan, cars honking, taxis swooping, clots of people pushing about in the hurry of urban life. What I found when I had gotten over my surprise at the quiet was that Market Street, once a mighty boulevard striking through the city down to the waterfront, had become a mall planted with thousands of trees. The street itself, on which electric taxis, minibuses, and delivery carts purr along, has shrunk to a two-lane affair. The remaining space, which is huge, is occupied by bicycle lanes, fountains, sculptures, kiosks, and absurd little gardens surrounded by benches. Over it all hangs the almost sinister quiet, punctuated by the whir of bicycles and cries of children. There is even the occasional song of a bird. Jason would like that, I think, unbelievable as that may seem on a capital city's crowded main street. So he looks around for a while. Gradually he gets a little, in the course of the book, he gets a little less creeped out by the various natural features of Ecotopia. He finds, for example, that large high-rise buildings intended to be offices have been mysteriously vacated because most of the corporate inhabitants have fled during the Ecotopian Revolution, and they've been turned into apartments, something that architects used to think was impossible, but which is now happening, although I'm not sure it's happening in San Francisco. The cable cars are free, and I'm going to, by the way, that's part of my time I'm going to use for a sort of a checklist of how far we have gotten toward Ecotopia. Another thing he says is, although the streets still have an American look, it is annoyingly difficult to identify anything in Ecotopia. Only very small signs are permitted on the fronts of buildings. Street signs are few and hard to spot, mainly attached to buildings on corners. Finally, however, I navigated my way back to the station, retrieved my suitcase, and located a nearby hotel which had been recommended as suitable for an American, but likely to still give me some taste of how Ecotopians live. This worthy establishment lived up to its reputation by being almost impossible to find, but it is comfortable enough and will serve as my survival base here. Now, the book goes on to review Ecotopian systems of transportation, agriculture, city design, energy production, practically everything about a small country that you could conceivably want to know. It was immense fun to write, by the way. It took me 3 years to write this little short book, because I had to figure a lot of stuff out that nobody had bothered to figure out before. The general theme being, we've learned all this stuff about ecology and about humans interact with the natural order, and how come we haven't put it into effect in daily life? And I was thinking it might be fun to run down, Ecotopia is sometimes taken as science fiction, by the way, but it's not. All the things in the book could have been done in 1975 when it originally came out, as well as, of course, we could do them now. And by the way, China, well, put it this way, Ecotopia has now come out in another alternate reality, China. It's just been published in Chinese to my immense pleasure. In a general way, for those of you who've never heard of it or are just curious about it, Ecotopia is a place that we now call a sustainable society, although the term wasn't used when I wrote it. It's a nice place. There's lots of sex, wholesome food, employee-owned businesses, compact metro cities. It's ultra-local and democratic, and dedicated to long-term survival with plenty of fun. Living better with less stuff is, of course, part of that. So how are we doing on our march to Ecotopia? And I invented a little scorecard that we can try to assess ourselves on. Number one is a very current issue. The Ecotopian government not only legalized pot, it gave out free high-quality seeds. Okay. So Ecotopian livers are very healthy, alcoholism plummeted, and how are we doing on an A to F? What would we say? Maybe B minus, something like that. We're moving in the right direction, although a ways to go yet. Number two, the Ecotopians had books, and mind you, I wrote this thing in 1975, so sometimes I'm very proud of my foresight. They had books delivered and printed electronically. And of course, now we have book machines, You can look at a book machine if you Google it. We have Kindle, we have iPads, not too shabby even if it's 35 years late. There's one thing though that Ecotopians did that we haven't yet, as far as I know, learned to do, which is you can print out these books on vanishing ink, so you get clean paper after a week. Number 3, the Ecotopians had picture phones, and the narrator remarks that they are much better quality than the rather primitive things that they had at that time back in New York. So with iChat and Skype, we're well established in that department. The Ecotopians had high-speed trains and a dense network of local trains. We're not doing so hot here, right? I mean, Arnie would like it, Jerry Brown would like it, Obama would like it. Whether it will ever happen or not, I'm not taking bets. The Ecotopians had electrically driven, driverless, by the way, or conductorless quasi-cable cars that ran all over the city, and they were free because the Ecotopians had calculated it would be more expensive to have somebody on board collecting money than it would be to just let people jump on and jump off when they go. Tell it to Mirny, it's coming. The Ecotopians banished privately owned cars. In a very, very small city like San Francisco, this is an idea whose time will probably come, but of course we're not there now. Taxis and trucks were also electrically driven, and this is beginning to come back. We're on the verge, well, there are several cities in the world which either heavily tax cars that come into the center, like London, or totally prohibit them in the center. And as some of you probably know, this idea is beginning to merge to the concrete in San Francisco. Now, Ecotopians were not like my old buddy Jerry Mander against television, totally root and branch. They had two-way television, which was especially important politically, because when a political figure is talking or has a discussion going on with other politicians, you can visually phone in with questions and comments. Two-way politics, two-way television, which take a lot of the curse out of the one-way television system that we mostly have. We haven't gotten there yet. The nearest thing I can think of is the Michael Krasny show on KQED-FM, where you can call Michael, and who, in my opinion, is a superbly knowledgeable and judicious fellow, and make comments which will very likely get on the air if they're halfway intelligent. A particular San Francisco phenomenon, which I think is very well advanced, is that Ecotopians lived in shared apartments and houses. Okay. How's that in the back? Are you hearing okay? Living in shared apartments and houses has, of course, economic necessity behind it. But in the Ecotopian view, it's also socially and personally desirable because it leads to more interesting lives, more shared friendships, broader tentacles going out into the surrounding society, and so on. And in that case, in that area, I think we're doing pretty well. We'd probably get a solid B in that, at least if you're talking about, say, under 30, under 35. Ecotopians were very big on conserving water and energy generally, and in California, I must say, we deserve to pat ourselves in the back, especially compared to other states. We are very good at conserving energy and water. We use less water per capita than almost anybody else in the country, in fact, I think than anybody else in the country. And you remember, we hate to remember this guy, remember Dick Cheney when there was the big electric supply crisis, when Enron was gaming the market and we were all paying through the nose? Well, Dick Cheney said, well, you know, conserving energy is just a personal choice. It's just a minor matter. It doesn't count for anything. At that very time, San Francisco friends, we were reducing our electrical consumption by about 15% because we found the light switches and we turned things off. And it was incredible to Dick Cheney and people who think like that. California in general, and San Francisco in particular, are also getting into solar energy production big time, of course. And Jerry Brown may be a help in that too. I was in Germany last year, by the way, and here's a term you've got to remember. Feed-in tariff. Feed-in tariff. The feed-in tariff means that if you have a roof with a photovoltaic panel on it, you can feed excess electricity from that panel into the grid and get paid for it by the utility. The feed-in law says the utility, in our case, of course, our beloved PG&E, would have to pay you more than you pay them for watts that you buy from them. The result is, when you drive around Germany, you see every large house and barn covered with photovoltaic panels. We need it here. Germany is a cloudy place, you know, it's worse than San Francisco. And yet it is absolutely covered with solar installations. They are generating more solar in Germany now than they know what to do with. And one more, if I can get my paper open here. How are we doing on time, Charlie? Okay. One more. And this is particularly appropriate to a place called the Makeout Room. The Ecotopians had 4 carnival-type holidays each year at the solstices and equinoxes because they believed in paying attention to natural cycles. And on these holidays, the usual monogamous or more or less monogamous bonds were relaxed and people could go a little crazy, something like the original Roman Saturnalia. So here I must leave it up to you. Do I hear an A? All right. As you can see, being an Ecotopian can mean having fun. So let's go for it.